All right. Good afternoon and good morning to everyone, and welcome back to Featured Pros Live. We're so happy you could be here today after a quick hiatus. Um, if you've ever seen an attorney presenting evidence from an iPad, maybe in a hearing, in ADR, or a jury trial, chances are they were using our platform, LitSuite, and specifically TrialPad. We're the only ones developing solutions for mobile litigators affordably. Before we get started, just a few quick housekeeping notes. This session is being recorded. We will send the recording tomorrow, so you can revisit any key moments or share it with your colleagues who couldn't attend live. We also encourage questions throughout the session, so please drop them into the chat. We'll be monitoring that as we go, and we've set some time aside at the end for some dedicated Q&A. On the Lit software side, I'm Hillary Hames. I'm VP of Enterprise Relationships. I work closely with law firms, in-house counsel, and government entities as they evaluate and adopt our software, ensuring a smooth buying process and rollout that the trial teams see real measurable improvements once they're up and running. And I'm joined by Andrea Burton, our Chief Customer Officer. You might have already met her. Andrea leads our customer success team, oversees education and training, and manages enterprise onboarding. She also partners closely with our product team to ensure LitSuite reflects how litigation actually works in practice. App Store subscribers can book a one-on-one training with Andrea, and of course, regular training is included for our law firm partnerships. Tara Cheever, our co-founder, is also here monitoring the chat and jumping in with questions and insights throughout the session. Today, we're really excited to be joined by Nicole Snapp-Holloway, founder of Stiletto Legal Group in Oklahoma. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, how is everyone?
We're doing great today. So Nicole launched her own law firm in 2024, no small feat, with a dedicated focus on nursing home and elder care litigation and a mission not to just represent clients, but also to drive meaningful change in the industry. She has over 20 years of experience and is known for her systems-driven approach to handling complex cases and massive records, particularly in high stakes litigation and appellate work. So she's also a member of the American Association for Justice and Oklahoma Association for Justice. One unique attribute of Nicole's practice is her approach to handling massive amounts of case data and how she uses the Lit Suite to turn that data into clear, actionable arguments. She isn't just using the Lit Suite in trials, she's using it every day in every case in a very purposeful and intentional way. So today's conversation we will walk through her workflows from the moment she starts collecting documents all the way through appeals. So, Nicole, in late 2024, you made a big move. You started your own firm with a very focused mission around elder care litigation, and you've described yourself as a systems person. What exactly does that mean to you in the context of practicing law?
That means that I really work toward developing a process, a repeatable process. It's not template based. That you'll hear a lot of attorneys in the PI world say, "Well, we got to have a form for everything. We have to have a template for everything." Okay, that's fine, but that's not how real cases work. They're not cookie cutter. But you do need a process. You do need an understandable, something you can explain to everyone else about what do you need to go gather? How do you need to look at them? What are you looking for? What's going to build your case? And that's where you need to have standards and consistent ideas about what you do. So it doesn't have to necessarily be the exact same thing every single time, but you need to have that flow laid out for other people to understand where your brain goes, which is, I feel bad for them sometimes because my brain's a little much, but
Have you ever witnessed firsthand what happens when an attorney doesn't have a system like yours?
yes. It's, and I've done it myself. I mean, we're all guilty of it. It's as many things as we know, and as many times as we may have done a particular type of case, it's really hard if you don't have some kind of system or at least a gatekeeping structure you're going to forget something. You're going to forget that these are important or that this is a particular issue in this case. So without, consistent ways of looking at things, you're not going to be able to achieve that and to make sure that you've covered all your bases.
Can you describe what case review looked like earlier on in your career before you built this current process?
Oh, well, like most people, I used Adobe, for a lot of things. I tended to even back then break documents into pieces, which I think is critical for really getting some intensive review out of them and making them useful. And luckily that habit translated extremely well into lit software and DocReviewPad especially. But it was still a bunch of comments on an Adobe document that I couldn't really search, that I couldn't print out separately, that I couldn't categorize in any meaningful way. And it's kind of like, to me, the best thing about Doc Review Pad is that you're creating a relatable version of metadata effectively. Like if you've ever done really complex litigation and you've gotten a load file, which is a spreadsheet with all of the data about the documents. That is what LitSuite allows you to create for your files, which are not 50,000 pages, they're 2,000 pages. So you can turn that data into information for your case. That's how you build your case, is you take what the documents tell you and you create the story. But you can't do that if you don't know how to uh, methodically pull that information out.
And are you working in a Microsoft environment at the office on your computer, or are you fully Mac? And how easy would it be for an attorney who is working in a PC environment and a Windows operating system? How easy would that be to bring in documents into Doc Review Pad?
I don't think that the Mac versus PC issue is as much of an issue as it used to be. For a long time, I was, a PC person. And although I started Lit software on the iPad because that's where it was available, there's so many tools that you can use to run a PC environment on a Mac or, to get your apps used. I mean, the iPad alone, to be honest with you, if you're working in a PC environment, you're going to need an iPad for presentation anyway. And that will be your kind of lead in to using them. I much prefer the desktop apps because of the volume of that I use them on, but for most people that your software is designed for, the iPad is going to be perfect for them because they're going to be sitting there at 10 o'clock at night looking through a thing of documents that they just got and they're, trying to find some notes and or trying to find some, little tricky things in there. And so they're not doing like the huge volume. But when you develop your system, you may want to think about ways to put that onto, a desktop version of that. But that's,
Yeah, no, I mean, most of the folks on this call probably have seen TrialPad at some point in their career, and maybe they've never even heard of the other apps in LitSuite. But you've actually said, I don't know how people analyze cases without two of those apps, DocReviewPad and TranscriptPad. What sort of led you to that conclusion?
oh, well, I mean, it was I go to court, I have hearings a lot. They don't let me try a lot of cases. I don't know why, but maybe it's because I do the work on the front end. But, to me that you live in the buildup, in the, you know, pulling the information out of documents. That's what we do every single day. I don't know very many attorneys whose job is sexy enough that they get to be in court every single day and it's all, Matlock type stuff. That's just not what our lives are like. So to say that you live that you couldn't live in DocReviewPad and TranscriptPad to me makes no sense. If you're doing your work and you are really looking through your cases and building, cases and getting the information, you need to have that as part of your system. And it's going to be an everyday thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on the sales team, so I'm always really focused on the value of our apps to our customers and their law firms. But let's talk a little bit about functionality and features. Walk us through how you Bates number, how you split large documents, extract key sections, or organize into folders by topic.
Okay. The one thing I will say is that I love the apps, but you have to do some prep work to make them as useful as possible. Um, for example, this is the example that I kind of use for a lot of attorneys because it's their freak out moment where it's the day before a hearing and defendant finally decides to give you 5,000 pages of documents. And you're like, oh my God, I got to talk about these tomorrow. I don't know what's in them. And I just, and a lot of people say, oh, I'm just going to say, well, they gave me everything yesterday, Your Honor. No, 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 no. It's not that bad. You look through the stack of documents. Obviously, there's going to be chunks of them. Chunk that into 3 or 4 different categories. For example, if it was a nursing home chart, you would have nursing notes and physician notes. You would have medical administration records, treatment administration records, MDS, and everything else. So you'd have 5 chunks. You do that, if you it's this kind of stuff you do every day, you know exactly where the information is going to be that's really going to tell you something about that. So you pull those into Adobe. I prefer to Bates label them in Adobe, and then I match the Bates numbers in DocReviewPad when I import them. So, but I will pull things apart into the chunks in in Adobe and Bates label them, and then I import them into DocReviewPad. And once I get, say, for example, the MDS reports, which is a nursing home thing, I will have a folder that just says MDS. And within that folder, then I will use DocReviewPad to go through and, you know, mark those with certain dates or tag them with particular codes for a section that I know I need. Um, and pull them apart. If I want to pull them apart, I can because they're usually 30 or 40 pages a piece. So I might have 10 of them and I could pull them apart and then name them by date or something like that. But the critical thing is that you can go through and search for I like section J is important to me. I could type in section J and it will immediately take me to section J of each of those MDS so that I can tag it and write a note about it, something like that. So it's turning that into information instead of just a stack of documents.
And we always have a question about color coding. How do you use color coding? How does that help you visually?
It, I guess visually I don't focus on it a lot. The one color code that I am religious about is yellow is for witnesses because I tag every single name that I come across in any set of documents. And it's always yellow and it's always witness space, last name, comma, first name, space, licensure, if any. That's just how I put things. Because if you do that when you're getting ready for a deposition, the absolutely phenomenal game changer ability to export page, the group of pages that you've marked is it saves you hours and hours and hours. I mean, if you're doing the work, the document review like you should be, then your depo prep is simple. Imagine this. You've got a nursing home record that has 5,000 pages in it. You've gone through it carefully. You've marked everywhere this particular nurse has made a note or where they're referenced, and you've done that work. You export that the day before their deposition. You run that through any kind of AI things that you love. I prefer Claude on my desktop because of the security wise. And you say, help me develop a line of questioning based upon these documents. You've pulled 40 pages out of your 5,000, and then you're able to use that document set to build a deposition outline in 10 minutes that you can then go back and sit with it and kind of think, okay, where are the nuances that nobody else could get or that no other tool could help me with? You've got time to do the deep work now that the busy work is done.
And what did deposition, you're using DocReviewPad for deposition prep. What did that look like before
Uh,
DocReviewPad and TranscriptPad? Like how many hours would you say it took for you
oh,
to?
it was, my paralegal and I, it would be if I was lucky enough that she kept a running list or I kept a running list of things that we wanted to remember related to this nurse or whoever, then it was only a day or two where we were going through the documents, pulling them out, maybe copying them. I don't, everybody uses electronic documents, thank God, but it would literally take you hours. And that's for a nurse's deposition. It's probably going to take you 2 hours to take. So the work necessary for the amount of time you're going to be in there talking to them is just, it was completely out of whack. Now you can get the information you need in a way that makes it so efficient. And like I said, it gives you time to do the real thinking. Somebody once said the hardest part about critical thinking is the thinking. And that's where we as attorneys, that's what we have to offer the world. That's our skill. It's not pulling documents together. It's not, it's thinking about how these documents show us what was going on at the time period that our client was going through this.
And fast forward to the actual deposition, what role does TranscriptPad play once the deposition starts? Or I assume you've probably done a deposition on Zoom. Um, what does that look like?
Well, I love having transcript pad up with any other depositions that we've done in the case because, if they say something that I'm kind of like, I'm not sure that's what was consistent with this person, you can immediately, find that person's testimony. The game changer in transcript pad for me, because I feel like each app has a particular forte that it just makes it where you cannot live without it. The one in transcript pad is the ability to search the entire case, all of the transcripts at once. And then immediately have it tag all of those for you so you could run that report. Do you know what I mean? Like theoretically, I know I'm talking to like not telling you anything you don't know, but say for example, my nurse expert sitting next to me, this nurse says something that is antithetical to what four other witnesses have said. They can plug in that query real quick, tag it, get a report, and then shove it over to me, and I can say, well, would you be surprised to hear that this nurse said this and that this nurse said this? Do you disagree with them? That kind of thing. So you're immediately challenging people in the deposition with other things. And after the fact, transcript pad is invaluable for creating your designations, for creating your statement of facts for any of your motions, things like that. So it really is the ability to search the entire case is something that I can't understand how people can live without.
Are you asking your court reporter to synchronize the video at this point? Are you doing that on your own within TranscriptPad?
I do it on my own with TranscriptPad. I just
Nice.
it's it's a cost savings. When you have your own firm, when you're writing the checks, it's little things like that. Big defense firms have unlimited budgets. We don't, which is why your products make it so easy for someone to be efficient, as a solo or a very small firm. You don't have to have the tech person on retainer. You can do things yourself. And to me, the beauty of it is that you learn to work with these as you move through the case. It's not just a matter of you're getting ready for trial, so you pull trial pad out. Trial pad is kind of like that's the performance part of it, but all of the rehearsals, all of the table reads, all of the practice, that happens beforehand. That's where the real work is. And once you're familiar with it and you've developed your own kind of way of working with the codes and things like that, then trial pad just becomes second nature, and everything moves seamlessly from one app to the other. So you're able to feel really confident doing that, in a hearing or in trial because you've already lived with the case in the other apps.
Right. Well, great. Perfect place to segue into trial workflow and appellate awareness. You do a lot of appellate work. How does that change how you approach trial?
Well, I think I'm a little more cognizant of where the testimony is going, and specific things that are said. I'm always looking for the elements. Obviously, I'm looking for things that shouldn't have been said that way, or the evidence that shouldn't have gotten in or didn't get in, and things like that. It's I pay very close attention. I've done a lot of monitoring of trials, even though I wasn't on the trial team. I was there in case we had an appeal, and that can be intense, because you really are listening to things very carefully. And if I've been working with them at all, which usually I have done some work on the case, but I'm not on the team, the trial team, so to speak. But I will have their entire case in my TrialPad app, or trial suite apps, so that I can go and look things up real quick and make notes for potential issues. So it's a matter of the notes that you take are a lot more efficient, because you're not writing things down just in one solid list. You're making notes on the issue codes that you've already built into the case.
Can you describe a time when catching something during trial made a difference later on in appeal?
Um, Not in a trial setting, but in a hearing setting. We've had instances where we've caught the defense counsel saying something that just was absolutely untrue. That alone is just worth its weight in gold, because really that's my favorite thing in the world. Not that all defense counsel are bad, but as a plaintiff's attorney, I'm always looking for their misconstructions, as I like to call them. But for appellate purposes, I don't necessarily think that we catch things that we point out, but we obviously will catch things that we know could be an appellate issue. So, trying to think. I know there was a trial one time where the defendants objected to a piece of a particular photo that we had sought to admit, and the judge allowed it. And so I marked that, thinking, did we really need that photo, or was it a little too dangerous, as a potential issue? And those things they do come back in appeal, because they're going to be on your list of issues.
I had a question come into our chat. How did it go down? Were you able to show their inconsistency in the moment?
Oh, at the hearing, so
Yeah.
to speak, it was the attorney had said, "Well, Your Honor, nurse such and such testified that." Well, let me check TranscriptPad, because wait, no, they didn't. And absolutely, then you can show the entire excerpt where that discussion was had. And I literally turned my iPad around to, my co-counsel right here, and I said, "Look at this." And he goes, "Oops." So we stood, "Your Honor, if we may." And we literally walked to the bench, turned my iPad around, and said, "Your Honor, here's the excerpt from that part of the deposition of nurse such and such. They didn't say that." And so, that kind of worked out well for us.
Yeah, you're gaining credibility with the courts. Um, a lot of your appellate work involves cases you didn't work on originally.
Yeah.
How do you get up to speed so quickly?
Well, again, you have to take the record, that the trial team has built, and hopefully they've built it themselves. I hate spending time, pulling together the appellate record, but if they've done that, that's great, because then I will again put that in Adobe and break it into chunks, and break those chunks into little pieces, and then I import them into DocReviewPad. And again, you'll have a list of potential issues, and you've kind of focused in on, these are the three or four I need to worry about. So once you have that entire record, you can go to the critical documents. But the beautiful thing is those aren't the only ones that are going to have great information for you. So being able to search the entire record in that environment helps you to find the little things that other people won't, because they won't go through the rest of the record. I did a civil rights case. The appellate record was 12,000 pages. And 4,000 of those were relevant, but there were a few tips and tricks in other places that I could find easily using it, this method and using your apps.
And how are you using TranscriptPad differently at the appellate stage?
Well, for the trial transcript, absolutely. It's invaluable because you are, a lot of times I did an appeal a few months ago, I finished it. And one of our arguments was that the judge instructed the jury on X, and we said, but there wasn't any evidence presented at the trial to support that. So going through the transcripts to make sure that we didn't miss something, that made me very confident to make the statement that, the trial court instructed the jury on this with no evidence. And then I could actually pull out little bits of testimony from experts here and there where they would have talked about that if it had been discussed. And I could say, oh, in this context, they didn't discuss it. In this context, they didn't discuss it, and so on and so forth. So it's critical to analyze the trial transcript in an appellate case for that. And TranscriptPad is just phenomenal.
So you've referenced ABA guidance around technology. Do you see using tools like this as optional or an obligation?
I mean, I would love to say that your tool specifically is an obligation, but I do think that using whatever tools you can find is an obligation. I mean, we are supposed to represent our clients as efficiently and effectively as we can. You can't do that if you are not looking for ways to get better quality product faster. That's just the way it is. And, I used before, the AI tech stuff, maybe 5 or not quite 10 years ago, I was spending 15-20% of my time looking for tools because they weren't out there, but they were out
Yeah.
there here and there, little, pieces. Now there's a tool for everything. And so now it's a matter of sorting through the things that really you don't need to find the ones that will help you the most. And that's another point to make is that no one size does not fit all. My process isn't going to necessarily work for everyone, but the key is to find something that helps you and that you will sit down and work with. And that's why I think your apps are so successful because they are so user friendly right off the bat. They're intuitive. The user interface is beautiful. It's really easy to kind of make yourself comfortable with them. And then that's when you really learn to make them work for you.
That is amazing. I have a question coming into the chat from the audience. What is your process for keeping up with important files onto DocReviewPad to make sure all of your files are up to date? Do you import daily, once a week, or how often?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, to be honest with you, I tend to my cases, my deep work in DocReviewPad tends to come in two stages. It comes at the in what I call the investigative stage, which is post-client sign up and preparing to file the case. So we have a bulk of information that comes in there. And that usually I tend not to import it to DocReviewPad until I have almost all of that ready. I know what group I need. Now, the second phase is going to be in discovery and things like that. So at discovery, you can have rolling production. I tend to remind either myself or my assistant, every at least once a month, what have we gotten in that may not be in my DocReviewPad yet? But usually I'm really kind of crazy about when I get doc production. I want to see it. I'm nosy, so I will immediately import it. But that's a very good point. I guess I never really thought about it, but I do have her help me make sure that I've got everything I need in all of the cases. But that might not be a bad trigger on your docket. Just the first of every month. Check for documents that you have not imported into DocReviewPad because if you don't have them all in there, then it's not just nothing's going to help you.
All right, I have one more coming in. How are you how often are you exporting reports to TrialPad? What exports running for TrialPad?
To TrialPad specifically, I don't have like a method for that, but I'm running reports constantly. If for no other reason than to just get a quick analysis of something. I love my reports in DocReviewPad primarily because of with all my issue codes and the filters and things like that, you can get a pretty good you know output of something. One of the things I love right now is in motion practice for say for motions to compel or something like that, I can go through TranscriptPad and DocReviewPad very quickly and find things that tell the court the information defendants are withholding from us is critical based upon this set of facts. So I can have exhibits in an instant, I can have deposition testimony in an instant that tell us and tell the court that this information has to be had. Time cards, for example, defendants do not like to give me time cards, but I need them for staffing issues. So I can get people to say, I can pull the transcript that says the experts are like, well, the only real representation of who was in the building and who was working is on the time cards. So bang, got that right. And you'll get the nurses, you get the director of nursing to say the exact same thing. Well, I don't know who's in the building unless I look at the time cards. And so you tell the court, Your Honor, we have 3 or 4 people explaining to you how important these things are, and yet they don't want to give them to me. All right. I'm a little
Yeah.
snarky.
Love it, love it. One more from the audience. How do you mark exhibits when you're using them with multiple witnesses and don't know either the order or having to manage stipulated exhibit sets? Do they exist in multiple files?
Um, I tend to have I usually have 2 TrialPad files for a case. One will be for depositions, one will be for trial. Only for that reason alone, which is, you tend to you're going to use multiple exhibits for, or the same exhibit for multiple witnesses. But I do tend to have separate copies for every witness. It just happens to be the same exhibit. But one of the things I love about TrialPad is that it's so easy to mark exhibits on the fly. And I'm the one that puts really detailed things in the top and bottom line of the exhibits because I want to know what it was. And I usually say what it was for. I'll be like deposition of such and such and exhibit 4 and that kind of thing. So,
Um, so let's see. Regarding collaboration, you earlier mentioned that you were working with someone in these apps. Can you share a workflow, how you're collaborating, how you're ensuring that um, iterations are up to date on documents and things like that? The
we
paralegal or an associate.
but my paralegal does not, or my assistant doesn't really go in and work in the apps. And we tend to work in silos a little bit with respect to this kind of work, the work that the apps are going to do for us. But as far as exchanging information and maybe exporting, document groups, that is where we kind of exchange, the ideas. And that's one of the things I love about the reports is that they can give, I put a lot of notes in my documents, which I love because the more notes that I have, the more I'm telling the story of that particular document. I don't may not have to export a document set because I've got enough notes on it. That can tell my partner exactly what's going on. I mean, if I exported, I can send her the exhibits that I've exported for this deposition, and I can send her the deposition outline, and I can send her my notes in the report for that, which are going to be my, that's my in my head thoughts as I'm looking at those documents. That's the key. So to me, that's where the collaboration works the most. It can be a little difficult sometimes to work in the same file. If we're going to do that, like getting ready for trial, we're just very careful about making sure we're both not working in the same case file at the same time. But it is a lot easier now than it used to be. Everything can live on your cloud version, and so you just know for a fact I've closed that file out, so you can open it and work in it whenever you want, and I'm working in this one now. So.
You mentioned earlier something about working with Claude. Can you expand on that a little bit? We were having a team meeting this morning and just, a lot of our customers are currently evaluating AI solutions for all different things. How are you using Claude with this product?
I first rule of AI is that garbage in, garbage out. So the better the better focus that you have going in, the better result that you will get. DocReviewPad, TranscriptPad, they allow me to focus a question or an issue or, a project in a way where I'm not giving AI the chance to go off course, right? And that is the key. Is that you're giving it everything it needs and nothing it doesn't because it gets distracted just like humans do. So when you can, focus what you're asking it to do and give it what it needs, then it will do a much, much better job for you. And that's with any AI system, not just Claude. But there's two things that I think are critical to using AI. One is doing it in manageable pieces. And when I say that, I think it's critical that we be able to ourselves almost validate the responses or the product on the fly because if it's too broad, I just don't trust it. I can't help it. But the second thing is
Mhm.
developing prompts, and you have to have a prompt generator of some kind. That and being sure that you're giving it the right amount of information are the key to getting work product that is phenomenal. It's not the end product, but an amazing start.
Well, we are going to go ahead with a closing question, and then we'll take another look at the chat to make sure that everyone's asked their questions. But for everyone on the call today who is perhaps evaluating LitSuite to potentially replace the traditional hot seater model in a trial, um, Nicole, can you share a good piece of advice for them? I know that, this method may not be cookie cutter right for everyone, but what would you say to them?
I would say think about how much you spent at your last trial, and how much even just one seat to play with. And I'm not saying that that's good enough because you should become obsessed with it and it should be part of your daily workflow. But the value that you can get, even if it's just one of the apps. Pick something in your workflow that you don't like or that you have concerns with or that's kind of a sticking point. Deposition summaries, for example. Transcript pad, the money that you pay for an annual subscription, the transcript pad usefulness in one deposition summary is you're going to get your money's worth. So don't try to bite off more than you can chew. Find one thing that you think they can help you with and use that for a little while. Develop your own process, develop your own system. And eventually you will come to find that you are actually much better at managing your case than you thought you were. And so you're going to be much better at presenting your case than you thought you were. And that's where TrialPad lets you be confident in what you're doing. You've done the work. Why can't you do it in trial?
Nicole, is there anything else that you'd like us to touch on, or maybe some creative use cases for the product that we haven't heard of before?
Um,
Oh, I have one more coming into the chat. Do you integrate your medical record chronologies into Timeline Pad? If yes, do you utilize it during the case or at trial and mediation?
I don't do that on a regular basis, simply because our timelines are years, and that can get a little bit clunky in any product that creates a timeline. Med mal cases, that's a much better useful, process because you've got a small window of time that you can focus on. But when I'm looking at, you know, they've been there for 2 or 3 years, that's a very difficult process. Now, the chronologies themselves, that's another thing that you can import. If you have something that does a medcron for you outside, you can import that into DocReviewPad. And it's beautiful because you're going through that and you can tag it with the same issues that you're tagging your documents. You can even match them up, so that when you have citations to where the documents are that are referenced in your Medcron. Everything has to work together, but you have to figure out what's going to work for you. And that's not going to be, a wholesale change flip on the first of the month and you're just doing everything right with the new tools. That's not how this works. I mean, attorneys hate change anyway. But we're great at complaining about things. And so when you're complaining about something, find something that can help you solve that problem rather than just complaining about it. And so the things that we don't like about our processes, you should always think about what might help me. And when you look at Lit Suite, chances are there's something in there that is going to help you solve that problem, in my opinion.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for that. Nicole, thank you for walking us through not just the tools, but a complete system for turning massive cases into clear, persuasive arguments. Really, really appreciate you. We'll be back again with another series at some point. We're looking for more takers. If anyone would like to be a free featured pro, just reach out to me at hello@litsoftware.com. All right. Thanks, everyone.